everyone. Welcome back to the Conservative Woman's Guide. I'm your host, Karin Lips. If you enjoy ideas that challenge you, stories that inspire you, and conversations that help you navigate today's cultural landscape with confidence, you're in the right place. Today, I'm joined by Peter Lipsett for an episode on philanthropy and the important role it plays in America. Peter is the Vice President of DonorsTrust, a donor advised fund provider committed to protecting our nation's constitutional liberties and strengthening civil society through private institutions rather than with government programs. Before we get into the interview, make sure you're subscribed to the Conservative Woman's Guide wherever you get your podcasts. And if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star review. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, Karin. Always great to see you.
Yes, it's a nice, cold, icy day once again, but it's good to be inside.
Yes.
Well, Peter, what would you say to a young adult who says, I can't afford to give back?
So I'm going to push back on the whole premise a little bit. So there's two pieces to it. So I'm one of these people who bristles a little bit at the idea of giving back. I feel like if you have earned the dollars, then they are yours to give. You have no obligation. And so if you want to be miserly and keep them, you can do that. I encourage giving. I think giving is great. So cut the back. You can't afford to give. Then there's the afford part. And I think we can all, similar to, many of you probably listen to leadership podcasts that say it's not that you don't have time, it's how you choose to use your time. Same thing with affording. So when I hear I can't afford to give back, what I really hear is I choose not to give. And if that makes you a little uncomfortable, then it means you actually do want to be a giver. So you have to then start with that premise. If you want to be a giver, then you have to find the way to afford it, even if it's very small, even if it's with time and not money, but you can find a way to be a giver if that is what you actually want to do.
So when it comes to philanthropy, when do you think people should start?
I think they should start as soon as they can. I mean, a lot of us, people who went to church or maybe, just saw their parents put money in the Salvation Army tin at Christmas time, have a little bit of that muscle inside of them to be givers. They've seen it before. They've witnessed it. Maybe they put some dollars or a few quarters into the Salvation Army jar, whatever it was, so the trick really is recapturing that impulse and building on it and growing it. I talk a lot about how what I view philanthropy, charitable giving, as a muscle. You have to grow it. And so you go to the gym and you look at the 100-pound weight, and you're not going to grab that day one. You may not even grab the 20-pound weight. You may not grab the 10-pound weight. It may be the 2-pound weight that gets you going on that journey, but you got to start somewhere, build the muscle. So start giving a little bit. Like I said in the first question, give a little time, give a little dollars, go from the 2-pound weight to the 4-pound weight to the 10-pound weight. And eventually, you can get to that 100-pound weight. You can get to be a real philanthropist.
I do remember Peter growing up and being very excited when the plate was passed in church and, putting a little money in. You're right. It's something that you see it modeled, and then it's something that you just start doing early on. And you mentioned also time. Can you talk about different ways to be a philanthropist? It's not just money.
It's not just money. I mean, in the church community, you often hear time, talent, and treasures, which is the soft way to talk about stewardship, when what they really would like is some dollars. But there's so many ways to volunteer within a church, within your community, within your neighborhood association, at your college. There's ways to use your time because people need time. It's particularly, wealthy philanthropists who may be able to give a lot of money are very time poor. They don't have time to go and volunteer and help, but a college student, a recent graduate, may be dollar poor, but has a little bit more time. And that's what they can afford. And so go and use that, follow that impulse, because there are all kinds of charities who need hands-on support. Your church needs hands-on support. College programs need that volunteer service to get things done. And, you can gain so much from that. I mean, it's a leadership experience, really. Even if you're the low man on the totem pole, if you're low woman on the totem pole, you're the grunt, you're just doing what's there. But you get the chance to see what's going on all around you in that ecosystem of that charity, that nonprofit. And if you really take advantage of that, you can learn a lot. You can see what other people are doing. You can see how the systems work together. And because nonprofits often are time poor themselves, if you've got a little bit more bandwidth and you see something that you're good at or just want to learn, raise your hand, volunteer, and suddenly you're doing a little bit more. You're learning something. If you're in college, that's particularly valuable as you go out into the world. It's a skill that will transmute into the work world where you can continue to climb. So definitely use your time, grab these opportunities to volunteer. Plus, you meet a lot of really interesting people along the way.
And you can make a big difference in someone's life.
You can make a huge difference. It doesn't always feel that way, but you're moving the needle.
For sure. Now, Peter, in New, we often talk about different seasons of a woman's life. So it's interesting as you talk about philanthropy, do you sometimes think about it in terms of seasons that maybe when you're younger and you have more time but less treasure, that might be a great time to volunteer, by showing up and being someplace. And then as maybe your priorities change, you have kids, time gets a little more crunched, the people that you work with might focus more on the treasure side of things.
Absolutely. I think that idea of the seasons is really important because you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't have the ability to go full hog on your philanthropic instincts at one moment because you've just had a child or you've got a new job that's working you 80 hours a week or, something is changing in your life, and find that one little piece. Again, if you have to go back from the 6-pound weight to the 4-pound weight, that's okay. Keep the habit going, find some way to do it, but things are going to change. And then, you find that you've got some more wealth and you have no more time. And so now you're a bigger giver than where you used to be more of a volunteer person. All of that is good and okay. And we get locked in our mind of what the right thing to do is, but the right thing changes as we progress in our lives, in our careers, in our families. And I think so. Your seasons analogy is a very good one and a really important one for philanthropy, for most anything we do, really.
We are in the year of America 250, right? There's lots of talk about celebrating America's anniversary. Could you talk a little bit about the history of philanthropy in this country and the important role that it has played and how it's filled different areas related to the role of government?
Yeah, the history of philanthropy in this country is fascinating and unique. And, it's in our world and kind of our pro-liberty, pro-free market space. We always default to de Tocqueville and the things he wrote about democracy in America, and which was really about people being joiners and building societies and using their time, their dollars to build stuff up. But it goes all the way back to the revolution, even pre-revolution, right? You can look at the Boston Tea Party as a philanthropic act, if you're, as long as you're on the American side and not the side of the East India Company. But, Robert Morris was a great financier of the American Revolution, and he put a lot of dollars behind George Washington and the Continental Congress and that whole experiment that was all going to be for naught if things didn't go their way. And, he saw the social impact that he was looking for with those dollars. And that continues on and through so many great innovations come about, some less ones. And, the temperance movement led to the prohibition of alcohol. Many people would say that's probably not a great one, but that was all charitable giving. The abolition movement was a charitable act that led to the end of slavery. Radar that we just take for granted as this scientific thing that was actually came out of private scientific funding. So there's so many little examples in our country of what philanthropy has been able to do, from social movements to inventions to just giving people their start and their capital. And what we've seen, unfortunately, really starting kind of in the 30s, is government encroaching more and more into that philanthropy. And there's some real dangers to that. You get more strings attached. Government kind of puts its finger on the scale of what the philanthropies are doing, where they're prioritizing. A new administration comes in and swings that pendulum, as we're seeing right now, right? And so...
Do you have an example of that?
Oh, I mean, well, to take just, one that's relevant to a lot of the listeners here of what they're seeing amongst the higher ed institutions, right? There's so much government philanthropy tied in, and, it gets a little messy. It's maybe not the cleanest example, but over the past, in the Biden administration, the Obama administration, there was a lot tied to certain affirmative action pieces, teaching different elements of, whatever, DEI, et cetera, Trump administration comes in and says, we're not going to do that anymore. Well, the dollars are still the same. The impact to the students is still the same. And yet all of a sudden, all those dollars are threatened. And because the thing that was okay to do here is no longer okay to do. And you see schools like Hillsdale or Grove City or some of these others that are not reliant on those government dollars. Yes, they may have been more temperamentally conservative in the first place, but they're not seeing those wild swings. They're not seeing those threats. Their donors are what keep them alive and supported. And so they don't have to be involved in these political fights that can really mess things up. And that can trickle all the way down to the homeless fight is a great example of this, and the policies there, on and on. So government putting its finger on the scales of philanthropy is a dangerous thing. At DonorsTrust, it's one of the litmus tests of organizations that will allow funding to go to. Actually, yes, dispositionally, we like private philanthropy, we like free markets, etc. But also those government strings create problems, and they can actually undermine a donor's intent over time if government wins change.
And what do you see in terms of a crowding out effect when government gets involved in more areas? Do you find philanthropists go to other areas, or what do you see happens?
Yeah, you can look at Europe. Europe does not have the philanthropic impulse that Americans have. It's just not there. Yes, some of them give here and there, but they're not doing it. Why? Because government's already there to solve the problems. It is clearly stated, we are going to fix this problem. We're going to nationalize healthcare. We're going to do this and that. And the more politicians, frankly, of both parties come in and say, I got you. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix this from the governmental standpoint. What happens is these community-based organizations, these nonprofits, step back and say, well, I guess you don't need me anymore. And more dangerously, the donors say, well, why am I going to give money to this? Why am I going to give my $1,000 to this, my $100 to this, when the government's going to come in with $10,000, with $100,000? I'll just let government deal with that. And so there's a psychological change within the donors themselves when they see more government money flowing into something, because they say, well, we don't need to do it. And either they find something else to support, that's the best case scenario, or they just back off entirely. And that undermines philanthropy in this country, which means we have fewer social entrepreneurs solving problems, which means problems don't get solved, or they get solved the way the government wants them. And as we've already discussed, the way the government wants them today may not be the way the government wants it tomorrow.
Well, I'm incredibly thankful for our generous supporters, Peter. And I always get very frustrated when I see the left attacking philanthropists. They might not agree with their solutions, but really attacking them personally. Because one thing that's amazing is these philanthropists, they can spend their money on whatever they want to, right? And they've chosen to give it back to their communities, to invest in the next generation of leaders. And so it's a proud tradition that we have in this country. And I'm wondering, what are the trends that you are seeing? Are you seeing more interest in philanthropists keeping their donations private because of some of the attacks?
There certainly is that interest. I think that's not necessarily new, maybe new in the grand scheme of things, but there's always been people who wanted to give privately for religious reasons, for family reasons, for whatever the reason it is. But the animosity that's out there now is pretty tough. And even a small donation can create all kinds of noise and distraction for a business leader, for a mom, right? For anybody. And so there is some impulse towards being private with some of that, or finding ways to do it. Because if people are worried that they're going to get dragged through the mud, they just won't give. And we do have to avoid that.
And that's one of the benefits of a donor advice fund, right? Could you share a little bit about what you all do at DonorsTrust to help people donate to the causes that they really care about?
Sure. So many of you probably are familiar with donor advice funds. If you're not, you probably are familiar with a health savings account or an IRA. So something that lets you save money for health, save money for retirement. Think of a donor advised fund as a way to save money for charitable giving, like a charitable savings account that you can put dollars in every month or every year or once, and get the tax deduction if you itemize. And you've got this little pool of dollars set aside, these resources that you can use for charitable giving to 501c3 public charity organizations out there that you like. And my wife and I use one to do our giving. We put money in every month, we let it build up, and then sometime we do our end of year giving usually at the beginning of the next year. But we can do that because with the donor advised fund, your donation happens for tax purposes, if that matters to you, when you give it, not when you ultimately grant it out to a charity. As you mentioned, you can give anonymously through a donor advised fund, because if you have the Karin Lips fund and you want to give some money to an organization that you like, but you really just want to do it one time, you don't want to get on their mailing list, you can make a $100 donation there, and it's just an anonymous gift from a account holder at DonorsTrust, right? Or you can give them your name and your address and get on their mailing list and do all that. You really can turn that knob however you want. So it's just a really powerful tool for people who want to be philanthropic, whether they have, $1,000 a year to give away or $100,000 to give away or $100 million to give away. It can be very flexible, more flexible than a foundation, and lets you pool that in one place. And then when you work with somebody like a DonorsTrust, we have a missional alignment as well. We're not just a tool. We're not just a bank trying to get money out the door. We want to work with donors who care about limited government and personal responsibility and free enterprise, and want their philanthropy to be an outlet for those ideas.
And talk to us about the Nova Society.
Yeah, so Nova Society is something we created back in 2017, and looking at the landscape and seeing, a couple things. One is there's a lot of nonprofits out there who say, my donors are all very old. They are going to go away one day. What are we going to do? And also, frankly, the millennial generation, our generation, Karin, the generation coming up behind us, they're very philanthropic. They're very engaged. It looks a little different than some of the older generations, more cause-focused than institutional-focused. But millennials actually outpace Gen Z or Gen X in their giving. Boomers give the most because they have the most, but millennials give more, and it's growing versus Gen Z. So Gen Z needs to get on the stick, and then Gen Z's or Gen X. Sorry, I get these letters. These letters just get confusing. But Gen Z is coming up through the ranks as well. But so we started the Nova Society to kind of help fill that void of saying these younger donors, they want to get involved. They haven't built those muscles yet. Let's help them build those muscles. Let's give them a tool, the same donor advised fund tool that, these more wealthy, more established donors are using at a slightly lower cost. Surround them with some mentorship, some events, some different things just to kind of celebrate their giving, help them along in that journey. It's for folks under 40, and let them build up so that they can really establish themselves as giver, really think about this in a systematic way. And, the secret to all this, the real reason we want to do this, yes, we want the younger generation involved in giving, but that younger generation is one day going to be the 50, 60, 70-year-old givers. And if we can launch those folks at an earlier time, they're going to come in a lot more strategic. You've probably met with some donors who are older and retired and kind of in this different phase of their life, and they're settling in and they're saying, now I'm going to start doing philanthropy. But they're not strategic. They don't necessarily know what they want. How much more powerful for so many organizations that we care about if that donor says, I've been giving for a long time, and now I can give a lot more, and I know what I want to do, and I want to really move the needle. That's going to really up the impact for the ideas that we care about. So that's the goal of the Nova Society, and we're excited. Folks listening who are saying, I want to get engaged, we'd love to talk to you about it.
Well, Peter, you mentioned the institutional versus cause, a trend you're seeing. Is there anything else generational you're seeing with Gen Z when it comes to philanthropy?
Yeah, it does look a little different because it is less institutional. It's more, what's the hot button issue? How can we get engaged now? And it's, they want, the millennials and Gen Z both, they want to see the impact of their giving. It's not enough just to give to an organization because you've given to it forever, which, frankly, some of the older donors kind of fall into that trap. They're very happy to move from one organization to another if they feel that the relationship is there, the impact is there. They're much more keen on that. And it looks a little different too. They don't necessarily care about. We don't necessarily care about the 501c3 tax deduction, right? Like You see much more giving amongst GoFundMes, online giving, quick giving, seeing their time as a resource to be able to give, advocacy as a resource to give. Now, if you the limits of that, I think, are the people who think they're charitable because they changed their picture on Instagram to whatever the social cause of the day is. I don't count that as philanthropy. I don't think that's quite going far enough. But when you really are giving your time, giving your energy, and giving your dollars in some way to a cause, it doesn't necessarily mean writing a check, which they're not doing anyway, to a 100-year-old institution, which they don't think is effective. They're giving to something that's probably newer, may or may not have a 501c3 status, but is showing some real impact on an issue that matters today.
Well, in our demographic, we're often paying attention to young women, and we're seeing more young women go left. And so I'm curious, as you study philanthropy, are you seeing any trends in terms of giving divide between conservatives and liberals over who's more generous or, who's giving more?
I think it's always been true that conservatives give more. Arthur Brooks who now, of course, is at Harvard and studies happiness. Many people may read his stuff in The Atlantic or elsewhere. Karin, you and I know him from when he ran the American Enterprise Institute, a great think tank in Washington. And he got on everyone's radar, at least in conservative circles, when he wrote this book called Who Really Cares, way back in, I don't know, early 2000s, mid 2000s. And the big finding of that book was, hey, conservatives, people who have faith, versus these liberals, these bleeding heart liberals who say that they're doing all kinds of good. The bleeding heart liberals don't give nearly as much as the conservatives, as the faith driven folks. And I have seen no research that suggests that anything has changed there. Yes, you have big foundations on the left of what the Gates Foundation is going to be doing over the next 25 years. It's going to be massive. Ford Foundation is going to be around forever and continue to drift in the wrong direction, on and on. But those two things, there's a lot of wealthy conservative givers who are giving a lot, but there's also just a lot of not that wealthy conservative givers who are willing to part with their dollars to their church, to their local community, to those organizations that are helping civil society thrive. And it is frankly more the conservative donors who are the backbone of that than a lot of the progressive donors who, frankly, going back to our earlier conversation about government's role, they're waiting for government to solve the problem. And no one's coming to save you if you don't save yourself. So that's, I think, the big divide.
If one of our listeners is really inspired by our conversation today and wants to get into philanthropy, what's your advice?
Well, I think there's two ways to work in philanthropy, right? One is to go make a lot of money and give some away. One is to not make as much money and be a social entrepreneur. And both are perfectly acceptable, right? I want everybody to listening to understand that. You and I have chosen the more social entrepreneur route. We still have roofs over our head and can provide for our families. And so, it's a stable life. It's good. And it's a lot of fun. And we do feel like we are changing the world. And that is a great route to go. But I also don't want to discourage the people who want to be lawyers, want to be dentists, want to be working at Deloitte one day, want to start a business, be a tech entrepreneur, whatever it is, go do that. We need that. Society needs that. Build some dollars up and give that to those social entrepreneurs who are making real change. And so just because you want to be engaged in philanthropy doesn't mean you have to work in it. And if you aren't working in it, you can still drive change with your dollars. And so remember that as you go off into your careers, as you build, as you establish, make sure that those are discussions that you're having with people you want to invite in your life of how do you want to engage in philanthropy? How are we going to do this? Because we need people involved. That is the basis of our civil society. That is the great promise of America, is that we work together to solve these problems. And as much as people on the right often talk about being individuals and the great power of individualism, that's all great. That's all true. The reason we want to be individuals is to be part of a community that is working together to solve these problems. And that is the magic of the work we do, of the work New does, building those communities that are solving real problems. And so invite everybody to be part of that solution through philanthropy.
You mentioned the magic and you've talked about social entrepreneurs. Could you share some of the coolest things you've seen when it comes to philanthropy? What problems have been solved or a big difference that you've seen an organization make?
Geez, I mean, just look around the landscape of the nonprofit world, and all of those things started with nothing new, right? Started with you saying, I think I'm gonna build something, and then building it in Charlottesville, and then building it beyond that, and on and on. To pick one story almost does injustice to all the other stories, but I sit on a number of boards. I get to see inside organizations, which is really fun. And it's great to see these social entrepreneurs look at the landscape and say, that's a problem I can fix. And see the donors that come alongside them because they get excited by that social entrepreneur's vision and help support it, and they do cool things together. So is there one example? No, there's too many examples to give. So maybe that's a cop-out, but
that's okay. We'll take it, Peter. Now I want to ask if, a college student is listening today and is facing liberal bias on campus and is thinking, okay, what can I do to give back to help make the environment better while I'm still a student or for the people behind me? What advice would you give to them?
I think there's two things. I mean, one, if you're looking to start that philanthropic journey, particularly into this world of ideas, just find a cause and give $20. If you've never given any money before, $20, you've probably got that ruffled in a coat somewhere. Like, go online, give $20 to new, to some organization that you really like their stuff and you always read it, or maybe just a local organization that has really had an impact. Just give $20 away, period. And then also find some place where you can devote 2 hours. And I'm sure, Karin, you could put somebody to work in amongst your chapters for 2 hours. Yes. find some, raise your hand and just say, hey, I've got a little bit of time. This one day only, right? You limit yourself. Just say, hey, this is what I got. Can you put me to work? And just go do it. See what that's like. And in other words, find some way to dip your toe into these philanthropic waters for the ideas that you care about. There are so many organizations out there that are advancing the principles of liberty, the principles of the American founding, particularly this year in the semi-quincentennial year that we've got here, that you can devote your time to. You can find something to get you excited, but also probably find a community, find something that's going to skill you up, find something that you're really going to connect to and grow with and make a difference along the way.
I love how you say skill you up there, Peter, because philanthropy can be a great way for you to make a difference and help others, but it also can be a way for you to develop different skills as you volunteer your time and take on more responsibility, try something new. So many young people, I think, are trying to figure out what they want to do with their careers, and actually volunteering and figuring out what you like and don't like and what you're drawn to can actually be very helpful in that journey and a kind of side benefit.
Oh, it's so important. It's so important. I mean, I remember going to a church work day when we just joined this church, my wife and me, in Arlington, Virginia. And I went to the church work day and found out that was really just a feeder program to suck people into leadership positions. And, before I knew it, I was a trustee. And frankly, I am not good with my hands. We buy houses that are all fixed up because we don't want to fix them up. Like, that is not my skill set. And suddenly I'm in this group that's charged with keeping the building, taking care of it. Well, I learned a lot. I also learned that it was more fun to be on the session and the leadership piece, and we eventually went to that. But those are really valuable skills that were really helpful to me. And then, went on to the session and eventually was able to lead a capital campaign, which I'd never done before. That was a great credential, but also a great success for the church. And I became more of a leader that way. And so, again, just like you grow those muscles of giving money away, you do skill up along the way by just volunteering and taking that time, and met some awesome people through other board memberships and leadership opportunities that you just can't do without being willing to volunteer at that time. Last year I ended up kind of accidentally as the interim CEO of an organization where I was the chairman, which took a lot of time. And my then 13-year-old was like, so wait a minute, you're doing all this and you're not getting paid for it? And she was very befuddled by that. And I was like, yeah, that's what we do. I believe in this cause. I believe in this organization. I was in the chair when it happened. And so here we are. And I'm going to do it because that is that's how this country was built, is those types of things.
Hopefully in a few decades, she'll be in one of those positions, and she'll say to you, "Oh, now I get it, Dad."
Yes.
Well, Peter, I want to end by asking you, in 2026, what are you looking forward to when it comes to philanthropy? Is there anything you're worried about, legislation, or is there anything you're particularly excited about?
Always worried about legislation because the people in Capitol Hill do not understand philanthropy by and large. They believe that they can solve the problems. There are a few. Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma is phenomenal. He's been actually a really great advocate of philanthropy broadly. But setting the jokers there in Capitol Hill aside, this is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country, and there are a lot of opportunities around that. And, we talked about finding things in your local community just to volunteer and to get involved with. A lot of these local communities have semi-quincentennial committees, 250 committees in your city, in your county, maybe even in your school, somewhere. And there's an opportunity, even if it's just to help organize the parade on July 4th or something leading up to it. There will be activities that celebrate our values, right? We're kind of getting in secret here. There's this patriotism that's built around this, and it's a milestone, and people get it, and we get to actually say, hey, yeah, I want to be a part of that, and I want to help us remember why this matters, why this is important. It's because that we do hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, right? That we are fighting for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what we're celebrating. That missional statement of America is what we get to celebrate this year. And that is a terrific opportunity, not just for philanthropy, but for our ideas being able to come through in philanthropy. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Peter.
Thank you, Karin. Always good to talk to you. Really appreciate the important work that New does. And for those listening who want to get more engaged in philanthropy, just go do it. But if you want to get systematized, reach out to us at DonorsTrust.org or novasociety.org and find out more.
Awesome. Well, it was great to interview Peter and discuss the impact of philanthropy on civil society. Subscribe to the Conservative Woman's Guide wherever you get your podcasts so that new episodes automatically download. Leave a 5-star review and share this episode with your friends. We'll see you next time.